Hello everyone, good evening. I'm Steve from UCAN English Tutoring. In this video, I'm going to assess one of my students' OET letters and provide the word-by-word correction along with the feedback against each criteria and finally the overall score for this letter. Let's start the assessment straight away. So the student has written down Anne Mary Jansen, who is going to be the recipient. So this letter is written to an occupational therapist. So Anne Mary Johnson is an occupational therapist, but she should have written down whether it is Miss or Mrs. Anne is usually a Miss. Okay, so she is going to be a female. All right, and then she wrote Pindam Private Hospital. That's okay, and then 1182 Bermuda Street, South Port, QLD 4220. So the address is written down correctly. I'm quite happy with that, except the prefix that is missing for Miss Anne. Okay, so instead of writing down Anne, I think it's okay. 1 second, is it Mary? Yeah, Anne Mary Johnson. Instead of writing down Anne Mary Johnson, you should write Miss. Either it is Miss or Mrs. So when we go through the case notes, usually it should be there. Okay, that's good. But apart from that, I'm quite happy with the way she wrote the addressee's contact details. So when we have to write down the letter to someone, we have to include all the details in relation to their contact. I mean, their occupation. Usually it starts with the name of the recipient on the top, and then we have to write down the occupation, and then we have to write down the name of the organization where they work in. I mean, it could be a hospital or a clinic or a village retirement home and sort of things. Okay, and then the address, street address, which includes the street number as well as the street name, and then the suburb or the town or the village, and finally the state along with it, along with its postcode or pin code or zip code, whatever you call, it's going to be the one. And then usually after writing down the recipient's address details, you have to leave a blank line before you can write down the date of the letter, which is quite good. I'm quite happy with this one. So you need to write down 15, that's going to be the date in the first instance, and then the month, that is 05, and then the year, it's going to be 2017. So it's really good. But the way she wrote it, when you look at it, this slash bar is actually coinciding with the number 2, so it's better to give good space, like the way she has given good spacing here as well as here. It's good to give good spacing between the slash bar and then 2017. I don't know why she has written on like this. It is always better to present a letter in a neat and a tidy manner, so that the examiner will be very happy. See, you need to impress the examiner with your writing skills. That is quite essential. All right, so here I would strongly recommend you to give some spacing. Instead of writing down 2017 without giving much space, it's better to give space. So please give a good space between the slash bar and 2017, please. This is not good. The way you have written on here is not good. So under the presentation features, your score may be impacted. All right, let's continue with the next one. Dear Miss Jansen, that's really good. See this one, it is Miss. So you wrote these prefix of the recipient here in the salutation section, which is quite good. However, this should have been mentioned here as well. So every recipient, every name of the person should always have a prefix if they are the adults. Okay, that's really important. Okay, let's go here. So regarding Miss Joe Black, date of birth 015-1990. Okay, so this is good. This is the way we need to write. However, in date of birth, we have to use capital B. So when we write down date of birth, let's say date of birth, it's good to use date of birth, capital B for birth. Okay, so this is more appropriate. All right, let's go ahead with the next one. Thank you for seeing Mr. Black, a university student who requires your professional assistance for his ongoing disability issue following motorbike accident. Well, I hope she wrote a motorbike accident here in the beginning, but she removed it after that. Well, accident is a countable noun. I mean, there can be one accident, there can be two accidents, there can be three accidents, there can be four accidents, and many more. As a result, when we have to include the singular noun, we have to use definitely an article here. It should be either a or an or the. So in this case, she should have included this. Let's say following motorbike. This is what she has wrote, isn't it? So unfortunately, this is incorrect. She should have mentioned like this, following a motorbike accident. This will be more appropriate. All right, let's continue with the next paragraph. But apart from this, the first paragraph is really good. The introduction paragraph is quite amazing. I'm quite happy with the way that she is writing down the complex sentence structure. When you look at this paragraph, she has included all the essential information to ensure she gets at least C+ grade. But we need to have a look at the remaining paragraphs to see whether she is able to keep the momentum ongoing for the whole letter. Let's see. So the next letter starts with Mr. Black was admitted on 05/05/2017 in emergency department at Gold Coast University Hospital. That is fine. I'm quite happy with that. With the sustained injuries. Okay, that's good. I'm quite happy with that. Radiographic and computer tomography studies revealed fractures to left hip. Okay. All right, let's say fractures to, okay, instead of saying fractures to left hip, you should use fractures to his left hip. All right, so because these are the body parts of this person. As a result, you have to use the article either the or his or her, depending on the gender. So that's one of the issues. And the other problem is you don't need to use the capital T here. Computer tomography studies, you don't need to mention that. So it can be small t itself. So these are the couple of issues with this one till now. So let's say tomography should start with the small letter only. It shouldn't have any capital letters, but you have started with the capital letter. All right, that's not good. And the second thing is, as I mentioned, you need to use to the left hip. Let's say to the left hip. Let's say to left hip. This is what you have written down, but unfortunately for all the body parts, for example, I have got pain on my shoulder. That's how we use. We should say either a personal pronoun or the article the. So it's good to write like this: to his left hip. Otherwise, you can say to the left hip. So either of them is quite okay. So you can use either of them. I'm quite happy with that. But definitely we have to use either the personal pronoun or the article the. All right, let's continue. Okay, ribs, comma ribs, that's good. And then right arm, that's fine. That's okay. So there's a full stop here. But when you write down a list of body parts, before the last body part, we have to use and. So instead of writing down this comma between ribs and right, you should use and. So let's say instead of writing down ribs, comma, right arm, you should have mentioned ribs and a right arm. Right, this is how you should have used. Anyway, let's continue. These are the small mistakes. It's better to write down neatly and effectively. Anyway, let us continue here. The finger glass cast was done to the right arm. Okay, so instead of saying a finger glass was done, it's better to use was connected or was performed or was installed to the right arm. So it's going to be or was inserted, because this fiberglass cast is a kind of what you can say, it's a kind of thing. Okay, so you have to use this as was inserted or was instead of was done. Okay, so you can say was inserted or was installed or something similar to that. That's going to be more appropriate. All right, let's continue with the next one. He also underwent total hip replacement surgery and spinal intervention. I'm quite happy with this sentence. There's no issue here. He has been diagnosed with permanent paraplegia as a result of what is this? Sorry, I think it's as a result of having damage to, as a result of I think nerve damage to thoracic vertebrae. And then she mentioned like loss of bladder muscle control. Okay, I don't know why she has written on this in the bracket. You don't need to use this if it is the same phrase. Okay, so whatever you are writing down already, nerve damage to thoracic vertebrae, you don't need to add this information again in the bracket. So you can either remove it or you can put, and loss of bladder muscle control if it is something different from the previous one. Okay, so you should have done that. But apart from that, it's not an issue. So there's no issue apart from this one. Let's say on 5th day, it's better to write down on 5th day like this. Instead of writing down on 5th day like this, it's better to say on 5th day like this. All right, I mean in words instead of writing down in numbers. On 5th day of surgery, well, the way you wrote E sounds like A, so it's better to write down it clearly. So on 5th day of surgery, this is how I see. It's not what word you thought of writing down. Please be mindful about your handwriting. Your handwriting doesn't need to be beautiful, but it needs to be readable. I mean, the examiners should be able to understand what you're writing down, isn't it? So on 5th day of surgery, comma, it should be ERY. I can see that, it could be E, but, according to me, it sounds like A. Mr. Black was transferred, that's good, transferred to our hospital for the purpose of physiotherapy rehabilitation. Okay, that's good. I'm quite happy with that. But we don't need to add the purpose of, because this one doesn't add any value here, isn't it? So when you say on 5th day of surgery, Mr. Black was transferred to our hospital for physiotherapy rehabilitation, it makes sense, right? So the purpose of physiotherapy rehabilitation doesn't add any value to this sentence. As a result, you don't need to add any words unnecessarily unless you have got very less relevant case notes in the question paper. I hope everyone can understand this. So for the purpose of can be removed if you have already written down more words. Okay, let me have a look at the next. Yes, so you have got more words, so it is better to avoid these three words from here. So you can say for the purpose of physiotherapy, whatever rehabilitation, it's better to use for physiotherapy rehabilitation. This is more than enough. All right, let's continue with the next sentence. Okay, currently after that you need to place a comma, but when you write down commas, it is very important that you place it close to the previous word. I mean, currently should have the comma close to that. You shouldn't place it in between these two words. I mean, don't place it between currently and he, but it needs to go, it should not go in the middle. It needs to go close to currently. All right, so currently he ambulates with the wheelchair. Okay, with all the equipment, whenever we use the equipment in the plural, sorry, in the singular now, we have to always use a article. For example, a wheelchair. When you translate this to your first language, you should also be able to understand why we have to use a singular article here. All right, let's continue with the next one. And regained upper body muscle strength. Okay, so let's read it. Currently, he ambulates with a wheelchair and regained upper body mass. Upper body muscle strength. Okay, this upper, you don't need to use the capital U. It sounds like capital U to me. Upper body. Okay, so let's read it. When you write down like this, it sounds like capital U. All right, so don't write like this. This one sounds like a capital U. We need to be very careful in terms of the use of the capital as well as the small letter. So please be mindful about that. Letters should be used appropriately as well. All right, we should always ensure that we get the maximum marks under all the criteria. So we have to ensure that we don't commit even a single mistake. We should not give room for the examiners to deduct marks from your letter. So that shouldn't happen. You should always boost your confidence levels and provide as much accuracy in terms of the use of grammar, handwriting, everything. I would say he lives with the parents in a 2-story house. Okay, he lives with the parents. It's better to use he lives with his parents, okay, rather than he lives with parents. Okay, because this one makes the information even much clearer, isn't it? So with the parents, it's better to say with his parents. Okay, parents means it could be anyone, isn't it? We may have maybe other parents also. All right, so it's better to say he lives with his parents. Okay, in a 2-story house. That's fine, that's absolutely fine. However, he is concerned about home setting. Okay, however, after however we need to place a comma, because however is a connecting phrase. Remember that all the connecting phrases should require a comma after them. Okay, you should have placed a comma after however, but you didn't place it. So let's say after also, after however, after as a result, after as a consequence, consequently, therefore, whatever the connecting phrase you use, you have to place a comma after that in a sentence. Especially if you start a sentence with this connecting phrase, it is a must to place. Okay, he is concerned about a home setting. It is better to use regarding home setting rather than about home setting, because about is an informal phrase. It is an informal phrase. It's better to use regarding home setting rather than about home setting. Okay, I hope everyone understand this. All right, let's jump on to the second page. Okay, it would be appreciated if you could assess his disability and provide rehabilitation therapy to meet daily living activities with much independent. No, this is wrong. I will tell you what mistake it is. Okay, it would be appreciated. That's good. I'm quite happy with this. If you could assess, that's fine. His disability, that's good. And provide rehabilitation therapy, that's good as well. To meet daily living activities, yeah, that's all right. With much independent, okay, let's say in this case, when you use much, okay, with much independent, this is wrong. Okay, the problem is with, when we use with always goes with a noun only. So what you should have done is that instead of writing down with much independent, you could have used something else. All right, let's say for example in this case, and provide rehabilitation therapy to meet daily living activities independently. All right, or single-handedly. Okay, so you could have used something similar to that. So with the much independent is absolutely incorrect in terms of the structure of the sentence. So we should use with, instead of saying with, sorry, independently, just independently. That's more than enough. Okay, independently is more than enough, because you are going to provide the care, isn't it? So and he needs to meet his daily living activities independently. It's going to be the one. Okay, it's going to describe this meet, how he's going to meet. He's going to meet these needs independently. All right, please ensure. Okay, after please you don't need to place a comma at all. It's not necessary. So please ensure, you can write like this, please ensure. That's more than enough. Okay, so don't place a comma unnecessarily. See, placing a comma unnecessarily is also going to be harmful as that of not placing a comma when it is required. I hope everyone understands this. I mean, wherever required you have to place the commas. Wherever it's not required, don't place the comma. Please ensure he will be provided necessary aid to help with mobility. All right, that is fine. I'm quite happy with this. But the problem is when you say please ensure he will be provided necessary aids to help with the mobility, the problem here is that we are using the active voice when we write down the sentences. For most part of the letter, I strongly recommend my students to use the passive form. All right, instead of saying, let's say, please ensure he will be provided the necessary aids to help with his mobility, you can say, you can request them in this manner. For example, could you please provide necessary aids to help his mobility? That's fine. Or you can also say, instead of saying ensure in the beginning itself, you can say necessary aids required to be provided. Necessary aids required to be provided to help with the mobility. That's another sentence. Or you can also write like this. For example, let me write like this. Okay, so providing, you can start like this: providing necessary aids to support his, providing necessary aids is vital to support his mobility. So you can write like this. This is going to be pretty simple. It's going to be a pretty simple sentence. Write like this in passive voice. When you write down the passive form, you can reduce the number of words, because in the active voice, usually you need to use a lot of words, whereas in the passive form, you are going to use very less number of words. It's going to impress the examiner like anything. You need to understand one thing, that you need to interpret the information from the case notes, the writing question paper, and then provide the information using your own words or using your own ways, right? This is very essential. Then only the examiners will be very happy and they will provide you B grade and more than that as well, right? So we shouldn't simply copy and paste the words and the information from the question paper to the letter. That is not at all good enough. And we shouldn't even copy the same words from the question paper to the letter. That is also not good. So these are the small things, okay, that can make your score go higher like anything. You wouldn't be even imagining that you can get 350 in your writing, but you will be able to get comfortably 350, which is going to be equivalent to B grade if you can follow whatever I'm saying here. Okay, let's continue with the next sentence. Kindly make a Bruce assessment of its suitability for wheelchair. Okay, I think I couldn't understand what she's saying actually here. Kindly make, is that make sure? I think it's going to be make sure. Kindly make sure assessment of its suitability for wheelchair use, including rails to the bathroom and toilet, as well as comfort showering chair. Okay, I think the problem is here she didn't use the sentences clearly, so I'm not quite happy with this. So kindly make house assessment. Yeah, it's going to be house assessment. Okay, of its suitability for, kindly make house assessment of its suitability for wheelchair use, including rails to the bathroom and toilet, as well as comfort showering chair. Okay, good. So the problem here is that, okay, so there are some issues in conveying the information. Apart from that, this sentence sounds good. Okay, so let's say kindly make house assessment. It's better to use, as I mentioned, it's better to always use the passive form. You can say house assessment for its suitability. It's not going to be of its suitability, for something. So if you do the assessment, you are doing for something, isn't it? So instead of saying house assessment, instead of writing like this, you can say house assessment is essential for its suitability for wheelchair use and rails to the bathroom and toilet, or rails in the bathroom and toilet, as well as commode showering chair. So you can write like this. So in this case, assessment for is not correct. So it should be assessment of is not correct. It should be assessment for its suitability. Okay, that's going to be the first one. All right, let's continue here. Assessment for its suitability for wheelchair use. That's good. Including rails. Okay, so this including rails is different. Actually, rails are going to be different from wheelchair, isn't it? So it's better to use like this. Okay, rails in the bathroom and the toilet, as well as a commode showering chair. So instead of saying including rails, okay, let's continue. Including rails to it's better to say Riles in the bathroom. Okay, so you can write like this. Okay, Riles in the bathroom and toilet as well as commode showering chair. Okay, he will be required daily visits. No, daily visits will be required. All right, instead of saying he will be required, we can use daily visits will be required. Let's say he will be required daily visits. Okay, so we can say daily visits will be required. All right, it's better to write like this. Daily visits will be required instead of saying he will be required, because this is wrong. You can't say he will be required. The issue is that this is actually going to be a passive form. So he will be required for his mother, for example, and this is not correct. It should be at least in the active voice. When you write down the active voice, don't get confusion with its passive form. You should say he will require. That's correct. So you can write, if you want to write on the active voice itself, you can use he will require. That is fine. But this is not recommended anyway. He will require is good, but this is the active voice, which is not recommended when we write down. For the letter, always passive form is recommended. So use like this: daily visits will be required, blah, 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 or he will require, blah, blah, blah. It is better to use, this passive form. This is highly recommended. All right, let's continue with the next one. Okay, so what's the next one? Where we were? It's here. Okay. Daily visits will be required for first 2 weeks. Okay, there's a full stop. It's okay. And then please educate regularly to prevent muscle dystrophy in lower limbs. Okay, right. Educate regularly. To whom we need to educate? Okay, if you ask a question, are you getting the answer over there? Educate regularly. No, educate him regularly. If it is a male, you have to say educate him regularly. All right, this is how you need to write on the information. And again, in this case, we can use the passive form. For example, providing education to him regularly to prevent muscle dystrophy in lower limbs is essential. You can write like that. And support him to adopt to current life situation. So you don't need to adapt to something. You can say adopt current life situation. That is more than enough. All right. So okay, let's go through here. There are a couple of mistakes here. Okay, dystrophy in lower limbs. Okay, let's read it. In lower limbs, when you write down in lower limbs, this is not correct. You have to say in the lower limbs or in his lower limbs, because lower limbs are going to be part of the body, isn't it? So we should say either in his lower limbs or in her lower limbs if it is a female patient, or in their lower limbs. So their lower limbs is common for both genders, so that is absolutely fine. If you're comfortable to do that, you can use that. There's no harm in that. Okay, what else? To adopt to current, no, it's going to be to adopt. That's it. You don't need to use adopt to current. Okay, it's going to be to adopt current. That's it. All right. And there is a spelling mistake, with the situation as well. Let me have a look at it. I think she wrote SITUTATION. It's like situation, right? Isn't it? So this is wrong. The spelling is absolutely wrong. Okay, let's say. So this is what she has written down, situation. Okay, this is wrong. It's not situation. See this one, it's changing, right? So T should be erased here from here. It's going to be situation like this. So spelling mistakes should be avoided. They will have a very bad impact on your score. When you write, it is essential for us to write down the correct spelling. Okay. Please do not hesitate. Again, after please don't place a comma. That is absolutely not acceptable. Place comma. Do not, whatever you said. Okay, so it's better to use please do without any comma in between. Do not hesitate to contact me if you have any queries. Okay, it's better to use questions, but it's all right. It's a recommendation only. You were sincerely, nurse in charge of rehabilitation ward. That's absolutely fine. Good. It's good. All right. Let's go through this assessment against the feedback. Okay, so we need to know the assessment criteria. So where she is losing and in which areas she is strong enough. First and the foremost thing is that grammar is not up to the mark. The reason is that we have to use nouns, verbs, articles, prepositions, and tenses appropriately. So use tenses, articles, nouns, verbs, and so on appropriately. So this is not done actually. So you didn't use them properly. So you have to ensure that you use grammar inappropriately. The other problem is, punctuation marks. Punctuations were not used correctly. That's another problem. So we have to use the commas and full stops appropriately. Okay. And use of capital and small letters could have been improved. That's going to be the next issue. All right. And the other problem is you have used the active voice. I always recommend you to use the passive form. Okay. Please use the passive form. All right. Use of passive voice is strongly recommended to get a higher score. If you are aiming at especially B grade, I would strongly recommend you to go for a passive form rather than the active voice. The reason I recommend my students to aim higher is that in the worst case, at least you should be able to end up at C+ grade if you are looking for just the immigration to UK. All right. Okay, so what else you have committed? The use of prepositions, yeah, we have covered everything. Layout is all right. I'm quite happy with the layout. Layout is okay. It's absolutely fine. Presentation could have been a bit better. Yeah, your handwriting is all right. Handwriting is not an assessment criteria, but handwriting is okay. Because it's clear, at least I can read some of the ones. Spelling is another problem. Spelling is another issue. You shouldn't commit any issues in regards to the spelling. Spelling is going to be a very important parameter as far as the assessment is concerned. So use the passive form and use the articles, use the capital and small letters appropriately. Do not add any words unnecessarily. Okay, ensure you write the words only necessary for the task. Okay, don't add any words unnecessarily. They are not going to add any value to it. So overall task fulfillment is okay. It's not that bad. I'm quite happy with that. But apart from that, it's not that bad. But unfortunately, I'm not quite comfortable to give you, the score that you are aiming at. Okay, so let's go through the assessment fully and see mistakes and their impact, and then I'm going to give the assessment score. Okay, let's see. So you have written down, you have committed a lot of mistakes in relation to the use of articles, prepositions, capital letters, small letters, and many other areas, okay, which are going to be the key assessment criteria. As a result, I'm not fully comfortable to give you even 300 for this letter. To me, this sounds like 220 out of 500 grade letter. I wish you all the very best for your next letter, Mary. I hope you should be able to achieve your desired scores next time. Thank you.